All right, everybody, we're back. Frankenstein, chapter 15. Are you ready? I think I am. Beginning a second creature. My wild appearance frightened my family, and they became even more alarmed when I refused to answer any of their questions about what happened to me. I couldn't tell them. I knew only that because I loved them, I had to save them from the monster. Days and weeks went by, and I couldn't seem to get up enough courage to begin my work. The very thought of it filled me with horror, even though I feared the fiend's revenge if he were disappointed. But I also knew this new work would require many months of study before I could even begin. During these weeks, my health began to improve, and my father was delighted. He came to me one day and said, "It is time to end our mourning and go on with our lives, my son. You know it was your mother's fondest wish, and mine as well, that you and Elizabeth would marry one day. I hope this can happen soon, as I'm growing older and I'm not in the best of health." "Father, I love Elizabeth, and I want to marry her," I assured him. But my mind was racing with thoughts of the promise I had made, a promise that had to be kept first. I had to create a wife for the creature before I could be assured of happiness with my own wife. If I didn't, I might be bringing untold misery on my family and on myself. During my weeks at home, I had read about some new studies on the human body being done in England. It seemed a good idea to do my work there rather than in my father's house, where I would fear 1,000 horrible accidents, or my reactions, or even my loss of sanity during my loathsome task. No, I had to do this work far away from the people I loved. So I told my father, "I still have some scientific studies I need to complete in England, and after that, I would like to spend some time traveling in order to regain my health completely. Then I will certainly look forward to marrying Elizabeth." My father and Elizabeth were delighted to see my new attitude and encouraged my trip. But because they still had some concerns about my health, they quietly arranged for my dear friend Henry Clerval to travel to England with me. Henry and I left Geneva at the end of September and traveled through France, Germany, and Holland before crossing the Channel into England. A stay of 4 months in London was enough time for me to learn about the new studies on the human body, and enough time as well for me to buy all the materials and medical instruments I would need. After that, we spent the next 2 months traveling through the English Lake Country and visiting friends in Scotland. By then, I realized that I had already been putting off starting my work for too many months. I began to fear what would happen if the monster learned of my delay. Was he planning some revenge on my family, or was he following Henry and me? I began to panic. I became so possessed that I feared days when no letter came from my father or Elizabeth. I'd become so possessed that I often refused to leave Henry's side for a moment and followed him everywhere. Finally, I made my decision how and where to start. First, I told Henry, "We've been enjoying our friends here in Scotland for a while now, and I want you to spend more time here. I, however, need some time by myself, perhaps a month or two. Then when I return, I'll be the old Victor you've always known. I'll be much better company, I promise you." "Really, Victor?" he protested. "You know I'd much rather be going with you, no matter where you're going. But if you need to be alone, I respect your wishes. Just hurry back." I left Henry then and headed for the Orkney Islands, a barren island group off the coast of Scotland. I chose an island that was little more than a rock, with only 5 people living on it. I rented a small, miserable hut that had 2 small rooms, a thatched roof that had fallen in on the house, plaster that was hanging away from the walls, a door that was off its hinges, and a few pieces of broken furniture. I had the necessary repairs made and set up one room as a laboratory. Then I finally settled down to begin my work. As the woman's body took shape, however, I began to hate my work more and more each day. Sometimes I couldn't force myself to go into my laboratory for days at a time. Other times I worked day and night to finish a particular part of the body. I thought back to the first creature I'd made and recalled how enthusiastic I was, an enthusiasm that blinded me to the horror of what I was doing. But now, I was doing it in cold blood, and I could barely look at my hands as they worked. I became restless. I grew nervous. I raised my eyes constantly, fearing to see the monster appearing in front of me. Still, my work was proceeding well. I was close to completing it. Why then did such a sickening sense of foreboding fill my heart? This foreboding, this feeling that something evil was about to happen, began to haunt me day and night. Chapter 16, The Monster's Threat. One evening, as I sat in my laboratory, I thought again, as I often did, of the time when I was forming my first creature 3 years ago. I remember that I had no idea at that time just what kind of evil fiend he would turn out to be. Then suddenly, a frightening thought occurred to me. I have no way of knowing what this creature will be like. What if she turns out to be 10,000 times more terrible than her husband? What if she delights in evil or even murder, as he has done? What if she refuses to go away to South America with him, as promised? What if they hate each other? He because she's so ugly, and she because he's so ugly as well. But then an even more horrifying thought came to me. Suppose they do get along together and go off to South America. What will happen if they have children? And what if these children are evil like their father and terrorize mankind? Suddenly, for the first time, the terrible consequences of my promise struck me with horror. And it was at that very moment that I looked up to discover the fiend's face at the window. An evil, ghastly smile spread across his lips as he gazed from me to his partly finished bride. That ghastly smile and the maddening gaze made me realize that he was planning something evil. How could I have been insane enough to promise to create this being? My rage intensified until I was nearly out of control and out of my mind. I took hold of the partly finished creature and began tearing it to pieces. Arms, legs, body parts flew everywhere, scattering all over the floor of the laboratory. I took one last look at the monster at the window, then rushed out the door, leaving the hated laboratory behind me. The monster howled in despair and shook his fists at my fleeing back. Then he turned and disappeared into the night. Once my rage subsided, I spent the next several hours sitting at my bedroom window, staring at the calm sea. A few fishing boats were gently rocking in the water, and the friendly voices of the fishermen reached my ears. Suddenly, I spotted a boat paddling furiously toward the shore. The bright moon lit up a figure as it beached the boat close to my house and jumped out. I began to tremble again, knowing without a doubt who it was. I wanted to flee, but I was frozen to my chair. Moments later, my door flung open and the monster stumbled in. "Why did you break your promise?" he demanded. "Why did you destroy your work and destroy my hopes for a wife after all this time?" "Leave me," I cried. "I broke my promise because I could never again create a being as ugly or as evil as you, one who delights in murdering innocent people." "Ugly, yes. Evil, yes. Now," he exploded. "But also powerful. More powerful than you, my creator." "Yes, you are more powerful than I am, But your threats don't frighten me. Gnashing his teeth in anger, he warned, I'll never let you be happy while I'm alone and miserable. I'll have my revenge on you. From this day on, revenge against you will be my only reason for living. Get out, you devil! I screamed. I'll go, he said quietly, with evil in his voice. But remember, I'll be with you always, ready for my revenge. And I will be with you on your wedding night. I laughed at him furiously, but he was too fast for me. He ran away from the house and jumped into his boat. Moments later, I saw him shooting across the water with the speed of an arrow. I stood on the shore, burning with rage as his words rang in my ears. I will be with you on your wedding night. So that was what he was planning to do. That's when he was going to kill me. I wasn't afraid for myself, but I couldn't bring such pain and sorrow to my dear Elizabeth. Tears filled my eyes. They were the first tears I'd shed in many months. At that moment, I made up my mind that I wouldn't let my enemy kill me, not without a bitter struggle. Okay, that's the end for now. Stay tuned.